Ladies and gentlemen, I am back from Call of Duty Next. It was a busy trip. I think by far the busiest Call of Duty trip that I've ever been on. There was a lot to do, a lot to see, and now there is a lot to talk about. In this video, I want to give you my opinions on Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We're going to go over the multiplayer, we're going to go over zombies, and we are going to go over Warzone. I'm going to be ranking each of these modes, giving them a score, 0 to 100, a percentage if you will, and explaining exactly why I feel the way I do about each of these modes. And let me tell you, it is probably not what you are expecting. I think multiplayer is going to be the easiest one to talk about. However, zombies and Warzone, I don't know. I hope you'll see what I mean about those as we go through. Now, this is going to be a pretty much as raw of a video as it gets. I'm just going to have gameplay. My face is going to be on it. And then I'm going to talk. So hopefully you enjoy that. If you enjoy this type of video, more of a rant style video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe. We've got lots more Black Ops 6 coming, including some story stuff coming, the beta this weekend, and much more. Now, let me stop talking about that crap and start talking about some other crap. And by that, I mean multiplayer. So as far as multiplayer goes, I think there's a lot of really good things about multiplayer, some of which that we got to see at Call of Duty Next and some of which we actually didn't. So the first thing that I will say is the map sizes. As a whole, the maps in Call of Duty Black Ops 6 are small to medium sized. I thought Rewind was probably the biggest map that we played on, and honestly, that was probably my least favorite map, which is odd because I thought that was going to be one of my favorites. And as far as the map goes, I still actually did find it decent. I didn't think it was a bad map. So that is a good sign. The fact that the worst map that I played there is a map that I still don't mind playing, I would still vote for it sometimes, is a very, very good thing. Now, the other thing that we didn't get to see at Call of Duty Next is the classic prestige system. So the classic prestige system is coming back, and this is something that we're not going to fully see until the launch of the game, because in the beta it only goes up to like level 30, so we're not going to get that full system, but I think that's definitely certainly a good thing. Now, the things that we did get to feel, the weapons. This is one of the better, if not best things, in my opinion, about Call of Duty Black Ops 6. All of the weapons feel different, and they feel like a punchy Call of Duty weapon. And that probably doesn't make any sense, so let me explain. So, if we look at some of the weapons that I actually got to use, we have the XM4. The XM4 felt like an XM4. Then we had the AK-74. I don't know why it wasn't the 47, but the 74, which was an assault rifle. And that one was higher damage, a little bit more recoil. And then we had the Amy's 85. This one was a lower recoil, higher fire rate. It was a very, very different dichotomy of weapons just in the assault rifles alone. And then you had the SMG that was like the Milano. You had two different sniper rifles. One was the SVD, which was kind of like a Dragunov, and then you had the bolt action sniper rifle. Each of the weapons, the best way I can describe it is had their own personality. And I don't know if this is because we were limited to the amount of weapons that we can use, and once there are more weapons and an overabundance of weapons, a bunch of them will just end up feeling the same. But with what you have in the beta, each of the weapon kind of have their own personality, feel very different, and I like that. I like that a lot. But in my opinion, the best thing so far about Black Ops 6 is not a big thing. In fact, it's actually a really, really small thing, and that is the fact the way that attachments work within this game. Basically, all of the attachments don't have any negative aspects to them. And what I mean by that is traditionally, if you had an attachment like rapid fire, when you put on rapid fire, it would improve the rate of fire and make your recoil worse. In Black Ops 6, that is not the case. In Black Ops 6, you put on rapid fire, it just improves your rate of fire, which is super refreshing because no longer are you going to have this, okay, well, I could use rapid fire on this gun, but the recoil is already pretty high on this weapon. So instead of just being able to use recoil control attachments, I actually can't use rapid fire because rapid fire it's not that confusing. Now, is Gunsmith still confusing? Yes, there are a lot of attachments, but not an overabundance, not a ridiculous amount of attachments like we've seen in previous games. And honestly, you're going to be able to use a bunch of different stuff on a bunch of different weapons. And I think that is the big plus when it comes to the Gunsmith within Black Ops 6. Now, let's move into some of the things I'm a little bit more concerned about. Number one, the game looks like Black Ops Cold War. I am going to get into this one. You know what? Screw it. We'll get into it now. That's a dumb comment. Of course it looks like Black Ops Cold War. It's developed by Treyarch. There was a thing going on last year at this time where people were saying this game is a $70 DLC, obviously referring to Modern Warfare 3. And I think there was a lot of evidence to support that. And more evidence came out. A very short campaign, a lot of assets taken from Modern Warfare 2, a bunch of things. But as a whole, I think by this time this year, we can say that Modern Warfare 3 was its own game. It was different than Modern Warfare 2. And yes, it took a lot of reused assets, maps from the original Modern Warfare 2, and a bunch of things in between. But pretty regardless of that, it was its own game. When you look at Call of Duty games, Infinity Ward games look like Infinity Ward games. Sledgehammer games look like Sledgehammer games. And Treyarch games are going to look like Treyarch games. If you don't like Treyarch games, you are probably not going to like Black Ops 6. And honestly, I don't know what you're expecting at this point. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? Treyarch is making the game. It's going to look like a Treyarch game. If Bethesda was making a new Fallout game, you would probably expect it to look like a Fallout game. I don't understand that comment, but that doesn't mean everything is good with Black Ops 6. So one thing that I am extremely worried about is the movement. So movement is probably the biggest and newest thing within Black Ops 6. It adds a very large skill gap, and that's actually not the thing that I'm worried about per se with this movement. So when I was playing at Call of Duty Next, the players who I was playing with are essentially the best Call of Duty players in the world. Yeah, there's a bunch that maybe play in Call of Duty League and things like that that were not there, but as a whole, these are like the best players in the world. And to be honest, I didn't see anyone doing anything overly crazy. It wasn't like I literally couldn't kill someone because people were so good at the movement. But what I will say is it takes a while to get used to this movement. There is a bunch of things that do not feel like Call of Duty is supposed to, and I guess that's what worries me. I have played Call of Duty for like 16, 17 years, and normally when you play Call of Duty, you learn very quickly, if you want to move the fastest way possible, you run in a straight line. In this game, that is not the case. You want to move the fastest way possible, you're going to slide. You're going to slide to the side, you're going to slide forward, you're going to slide backwards, and you're going to change the direction that you are looking as you do it in case enemies are around you. And you know what? If you want to move a little bit faster or get behind cover, you're going to dive, and you're going to dive in every single direction. It is really weird to get used to. Really weird. And I'm scared to a certain extent that that barrier to entry is going to hinder the success of Black Ops 6, because with how good those weapons feel, with the decision of only making small maps, these great things that they're doing, the attachments only having positive, if this movement fails and people do not like it, Black Ops 6 is going to fail. Because really, when it comes to Black Ops 6, the thing that is actually new here, the thing that is different than other Call of Duty games, is the movement. And another worry I have with that is that I heard some people say, oh, well, the movement looks clunky. Maybe it feels a little bit clunky. Well, there are parts of it that are supposed to feel clunky, and I don't know if that's a good decision. For example, when you kind of move around, dive, slide, there's kind of like this shaky movement on your weapon. That's kind of gotten rid of if you use the perk Dexterity. So all of a sudden, it feels a little bit less clunky just because of that one thing. But the way I want to compare this is to a different type of movement in Call of Duty. Way back in the day, we were given advanced movement, specifically in a Sledgehammer game called Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. That movement sucked, at least in my opinion. The pogo stick movement, as I like to call it, you'd be running, you press jump or you double jump, and it just shoots you up in the air like you were on a pogo stick with rockets on it. And then you'd land back on the ground. And then later on, Treyarch came along, and even Infinity Ward came along, and I think they perfected that 3D movement. The wall running, the slow boost jumping, not giving you just a giant boost right away. They took 3D movement, specifically Black Ops 3 did, and made it feel right. And I worry that Black Ops 6 is the first iteration of Omni movement. and it will not be the best version because they will refine it and make it better. And maybe that even happens later on with Black Ops 6. But I still feel like there is tweaking and things that need to be changed there in order for this to be the movement that people actually prefer. Similar ways to how the Advanced Warfare, 3D advanced movement, whatever you want to call it, was eventually refined by Treyarch and made better. I'm worried that that is going to happen here as well. And again, adding a pretty big barrier to entry, what I noticed about Black Ops 6 is every single year when a new Call of Duty game comes out, people make videos saying what are the best settings for that game. In Black Ops 6, there are so many settings that need to be changed. There are graphic settings that need to be changed. You have to set your audio correctly. You now have to change what buttons, the way that you move, how you move. If you want to use intelligent movement, if you don't want to use intelligent movement, do you want colorblind on? Do you not? There are so many settings, which is a good thing, I guess, because what that means is that you can make the game play the way that you want to. For example, you can have different types of HUDs. The downside to that is when you have that many options, people will actually do nothing. It's actually a thing in a lot of like economics and marketing. I worked in a grocery store for a long time, and one of the things that they did is when you have an end cap, say you're selling soda, and on that end cap, you could have 15 different types of pop. But they don't do that. Why? Because when people have too many options, the decision that they make is generally doing nothing at all. That's why you'll see two things on the end cap of a grocery store. You'll have Coke, you'll have Pepsi, or you'll have Mountain Dew and Dr. Pepper. They won't give you too many options because when you give too many options to someone, they just freeze and go, yeah, I don't know, and leave. Same reason why you and your girlfriend can never decide what you want for dinner at night. There's simply too many options. If there was just pizza and wings, you can decide between pizza and wings, but when there's tacos, when there's Italian food, there's pizza, there's Chipotle, there's Chinese food, there's Thai, do you want ramen? All of a sudden you can't make a decision. And I'm worried about that being too overwhelming for a new player. Yes, you can just hop in and play, but to kind of excel at the game, you're gonna need to change things. And then by far the worst thing about multiplayer, by far not even close, is spawns. Spawns are absolutely brutal on most of the maps that I played. On the medium-sized maps, they work. However, most of the maps that I played were very small. Babylon, very small. And then you played the face-off maps. The pit was actually okay. The spawns made somewhat sense, and that's because there was a lot of very defined lanes. But Gala, it was a super wide open small map, and you can basically see from one side of the map to the other. Like Babylon, constantly watching people spawn, people constantly watching me spawn. And of course, that's always a problem with these small maps, but I found it be a little bit extra within Black Ops 6. And generally speaking, that's one of the things that they hone in within the beta of a Call of Duty game. So honestly, I really enjoy the multiplayer for Black Ops 6. Are there problems? Are there things that need to be fixed? Yes. Are there things that I'm worried about? Yes. I do not know what people are going to think of the Omni movement once they get their hands on it. I don't know. I want to hear what the general public has to say about it. As a whole, I think it's a good improvement to the game, but I just don't know what the public's going to think about it. Honestly, I give multiplayer maybe like an 82% out of 100. There's definitely room for improvement here, but out of everything that I saw at Call of Duty Next, it was the creme de la creme. It was the best part of Black Ops 6. And you'll see what I mean as we go through that. And speaking of that, let's jump over to zombies. Now, by the way, the reason why I'm doing it in this order is because this is the order that I played it in, so it works in my head. So I think they made a mistake with zombies in Black Ops 6. A big mistake with zombies. And that is what they showed at Call of Duty Next. And you'll see why I say that. Number one, zombies looks silly with the HUD. It just does, especially on the Liberty Falls map. Essentially, there are two maps that are in Black Ops 6. Number one, there is Terminus. This is your dark, gritty, and as people are calling it, the real Call of Duty Zombies map. Now, the reason why people are saying that is because then you have Liberty Falls, which is bright, vibrant, very small, and very simplistic. It is very clear that they have two different types of map here. One's that is very obvious, easy to play, that being Liberty Falls. And then we have Terminus. It is way bigger, it is more confusing, there is more things to do, and it is more difficult. Liberty Falls, you can hop in and literally follow the instructions, and within 5 minutes you have a pack-a-punched weapon because it is that easy to do. You didn't need to turn on power, you didn't need to do anything fancy. You literally just open doors and eventually you get pack-a-punch. It is two very different maps made for two very different types of people. Now, the mistake that they made was showing this at an event that was for serious Call of Duty players. If you watched Call of Duty Next, and if you watched this video, you are not a casual player. You know what you are doing, and you know what you are playing, and you don't need your hand to be held because you've played Call of Duty probably for years. So to show us the map that is for the noobs doesn't make any sense. I think it is completely okay to have that map, and quite honestly, I really don't have anything wrong with Liberty Falls. It is just a simplistic zombies map. But when that is the map that you show at the big event for the in-depth players that will actually watch that event, you should have flip-flopped it. You should have showed Liberty Falls first, and then later at Call of Duty Next be like, okay, but this is the real one. This is for you guys, the people that really care about the game. This one is for you. Not just like open doors, pack-a-punch weapons, survive as long as you can. We can't see Easter eggs, so we don't know what that's going to look like. We know it's a small map. We know it's bright. We know it's vibrant. Yeah, it's a casual zombies map. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that is completely okay. Now, the other complaint that I see is interesting. This game, Zombies, looks like Warzone. And it does, to be quite honest with you. Number one, it's on the same engine. And number two, they use the Warzone HUD. And they use the multiplayer HUD as well. And they use armor, just like Warzone. So I think when people see that and they don't like Warzone, they're like, well, why would I play this? But the second you get rid of the HUD, all of that goes away and people are like, oh yeah, it's Zombies, I'll play that. So I think it's more of a looks and perception problem with what people saw at Liberty Falls, because I saw a lot of complaints about Zombies. And I don't think what I played was bad. I think it was fun. It was easy. And honestly, it was like a 6 out of 10. So I guess 60%. We'll give it a 60. It's not a 69. It's like a 65. But I think if we would have played Terminus, I think it would have been like a 78. So that's kind of what I come to expect out of Zombies. And the one thing that I didn't mention in multiplayer is we are getting mastery camos in multiplayer, in Zombies, and in Warzone. And I'm probably going to be grinding all of them because I think all of the modes, except for the next one that we're going to talk about, might actually be worth doing that, just because I think they're all really decent modes. But again, Liberty Falls is just more casual. Speaking of things that aren't casual, let's talk about the next mode, which is Warzone. So there's a lot of good things being added into Warzone, a lot of good quality of life changes. I'm just going to go through some of them and then I'm going to get to my opinion. Perks on the ground, that is good. Unlimited tac sprint while you're using a melee weapon, that is good. That's another like proof of concept, like a good way, a good solution of adding unlimited sprint to the game. The new map, Area 99, is an amazing, amazing concept for a map. It is the place where Nuketown is made, is essentially what it is. And I will have a much more in-depth video on that. I was going to do it today. I think I'm way too tired, so either probably Saturday or Sunday, we'll do a video on that. But trust me, there's a really cool backstory behind there. It's also really small. I shouldn't say this, but I think it is the smallest Resurgence map ever made. On top of that, the new sniper rifle, the LR, it is a one-shot headshot with full armor. That's a good thing. We know how things are looking. But it looks like crap. Like, just straight up, like, the map doesn't look good. Now, the build that we played on was an alpha, and they implemented all of these great things. The loot looks better. They got rid of backpacks, which some of that is actually a little bit weird. Like, for example, I had a bunker buster and I found an airstrike on the ground. Well, because backpacks are gone, I couldn't stow my kill streak. So either I use one or I have to make a decision. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just immediately feels weird because you're not used to it. The loot looks better, but it is not floating loot like we had originally in the very first version of Warzone. It still lays there on the ground. It is colored nicer. It is easier to see. It is easier to pick up, but it is still not floating loot. But the game looks like crap. And what I mean by that is the color palette on this new map is so bland, dreary, desert-like. The one thing that I said as soon as we saw this map is, okay, this is interesting. It is the only Warzone map that does not have water on it. It's the middle of a desert. It is not surrounded by water. There's no island. It's not a Rebirth Island or Verdansk, where they had water at the bottom, or Ashika Island, or all of these other islands. There is no water whatsoever. It is just a desert, and you kind of have a limit as to where you can go, or you're going to explode, or anything along those lines. You just can't go out of it or die. So with that, how do you make a desert look interesting? Well, we've seen this before. We've seen Nuketown in a desert, and the way that they did it was with these pastel yellows, these bright and vibrant baby blues. You had a red bus in the middle. This map doesn't look like that. It's just brown, brown, and more brown. If I was them, the first thing I would be doing after Call of Duty Next is going to this map and just bumping the colors up on literally everything. Making the skybox more blue. Making the sand more yellow or orange or whatever color palette they want to go with. Making all of the walls brighter versions of the colors that they are. Just doing that alone will make this map a lot better, 100 times better. The other complaint I have about the map is I call this mini caldera. And the reason why I say that is caldera was essentially a volcano. So in other words, the middle of the map was the highest point and everything was shorter going out towards the edges of the map. This map does exactly that. It is a raised middle and everything outside is down. So if you just land in the middle, take a sniper, go on the top, yeah, someone will probably pick you off, but you're going to have an advantage because you're going to be at the middle of the map. Most likely the zone will end closer to there. And on top of that, you have the vantage point. And I don't like that design. I don't like stay in the middle and you'll be good. It's just not my cup of tea. But I will say, I like what I played. It felt good. It felt fresh. I liked the addition of Omni movement into Warzone. I think it may get extremely sweaty with a higher time to kill because of armor and more movement with Omni movement. I think Omni movement will be much more abused in Warzone than it will ever in multiplayer just because of the time to kill differential between the two. So again, just like multiplayer, that does worry me. This has to be refined and watched and checked, and I think it will be throughout the beta. But I liked having it there. It did speed up Warzone a little bit, and I'll be interested to see how that works on other maps. How these quality of life changes that all seem pretty good. Like, for example, being able to use any of the 18 different perks, just choose 3 perks, is, I think, a really good quality of life change for Warzone. As a whole, if I was ranking Warzone out of 100, I think it'd be like it might be a 69, maybe 71, 69, 71. I think there's room for improvement here. If you put a better color palette on this, I think that immediately bumps it up like 10%. Honestly, I think just how drab it looked, like you don't want to be playing things like that. We've seen games like that before. Call of Duty Ghost comes to mind, where everything was just like the same color, and they did fix that with DLC a little bit, but it just becomes boring. You don't want to look at it. And again, I want to come back to the thing that everyone, I've seen it. I've seen it in the comments. I see what people are saying. This is just a new version of Black Ops Cold War. Yes. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else you to expect. I don't know. The next Infinity Ward is going to be a reskin of Modern Warfare. Sledgehammer, I don't know what they're doing. Maybe that one won't seem like a reskin, but definitely, when you see a Treyarch game, you know it's a Treyarch game. When you see an Infinity Ward, you know it's an Infinity Ward game. When you see a Bethesda game, you know it's a Bethesda game. When you see a Diablo game, you know it's a Diablo game. They just constantly make small improvements, slowly becoming better, but it is what it is for a reason. There's a reason why New Coke failed, is because they tried something new and it didn't work. And that's what Call of Duty does. They know the bread and butter and they stick to it. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. Now, what I would like to see, this is a complete side note, is a new IP. Do what Warzone did. Warzone came out and was like, we are a battle royale. We are the Call of Duty-ized battle royale, and people loved it. If we had a Call of Duty-ized Destiny, or a Call of Duty-ized looter shooter, or a Call of Duty-ized extraction shooter, which we kind of did, and people did really enjoy DMZ, it just wasn't worked on after it was launched. I think people would really like that. And I think that is where we see innovation in Call of Duty. Yes, the movement is a good improvement, only using small map, but all of these are essentially quality of life improvements, new maps, new weapons on a reskinned game. That is what you're getting with Call of Duty. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But let me know what you think. These have been my opinions. Some were pretty harsh, some were not. Multiplayer was my favorite, followed by Warzone. Zombies, I think, will be my favorite once we play the other map. It just, that's not what we were showing, so I can't address that one. I liked Zombies. I liked what I was played a lot. It's just, it was boring. The map was boring. It was just too easy, if you will. So yeah, I think I'll like the other one more. Those are my opinions. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a long one, and until next time.
We are